Hi, my name is Laura, and I'm going to be doing the opposition speech for this round. So, I'm just going to make a little disclaimer before we start. This speech contains topics of sexual assault, homophobia, and xenophobia. If this is a problem with either the judge or the opposing speaker, please let me know, and I will be glad to change the topics of the speech. So with that said, my time shall begin now. Resolved, this House believes that nation states do not have an obligation of any kind to unconditionally allow entry for legal refugees. Framework, the team that provides warranted impactful evidence protected the integrity of legal refugees should win this round. Since the proposition did not provide any framework, this is going to be the framework for this data round. Now, condition number one, the startup. The real threat and concern of the migratory crisis is the start of the migratory phase. A new report says that refugees and migrants attempted to reach Europe through the Mediterranean Sea lost their lives at an alarming rate in 2018. Speaking of the launch, Filippo Grandi, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, reported that 6 lives were lost each day in 2018. At least 18,000 people have lost their lives in Mediterranean crossings since 2014, only crossing this specific sea, according to the UN's International Organization for Migration. The conditions in which migrants travel can not only be deadly but also open venues through which they can become snared in sex trafficking rings. In some circumstances, migrants voluntarily make the decision to take on sex work, which smugglers promise will be lucrative and not require any documentation, perfect for surviving financially. However, upon agreeing to this work, many are abused and treated as sex slaves, as well as taken for them from home, where they often fall deeper into poverty, meaning that this is not helping them in any way. They're just ending in a poverty trap. Others are unaware of their coercion into the trade until it's too late. Smugglers promise safe passage into Europe in return for payments that run an average from $3,000 to $6,000, according to a 2015 Interpol report. However, smugglers frequently use physical and sexual abuse to demand more money to make more profit from their own good. Now, into contention number 2, discrimination. So, point A, xenophobia. Recent research documenting anti-Muslim bias in U.S. government agencies. It's a wake-up call that intervention should be particularly concerned about prejudice by frontline public sector workers and policymakers, meaning that instead of allowing more people to enter the country, they first have to make sure that the system that they have, that's their real responsibility and obligation, making the system that they already have and all the refugee camps safe for those asylum seekers. Now, perceived moral deservingness of asylum seeker refugees and migrants shaped services and policy responses towards them. This involves perceptions which are distinct from the formal search of entitlements. Many end up unemployed because they fail to gain qualifications because they do not get the required education to meet this requirement. More than half, meaning 51% refugees surveyed, also blame discrimination for them being jobless. So meaning that they're not being successful, as the opposing team mentioned in their speech, in this scenario, because they are being discriminated just because either they're Muslim or that they portray to another religion, which the state doesn't allow in their country. Now, subpoint B, homophobia. Members of the LGBTQ plus community who face official persecution in nations such as Iran and Uganda have been fleeing to Europe for years, but experts estimate that a record number of members of the community seeking asylum, as many as 50,000, will arrive this year in Germany. Once in Europe, the LGBT community plus members are herded along with other asylum seekers into cramped shelters and camps where a number of them are exposed to serious harassment. The Lesbian Gay Federation of Berlin and Brandenburg, for instance, it is receiving 3 to 6 cases a week in which gay asylum seekers have been victims of physical abuse, including sexual assault. Earlier this month, a 21-year-old gay Arab asylum seeker in Berlin was hospitalized after he was insulted and assaulted at the refugee center he was staying. Now, into our last contention, that is, refugees are also unprotected in these camps. According to the European Parliament, on September 2019, a 5-year-old Afghan boy died on Lesbos after being run over by an ivory whilst he slept in a cardboard box near Moria refugee camp. Some 7,000 people currently living in the camp, more than double its intended capacity. Conditions in the camp are extremely unsafe for asylum seekers, characterized by insufficient and poor quality housing, food shortages, and no provision for the thousands of children who live there. This is not the first case of its kind, though. Prior to this incident, the most recent child death occurred on August 2019, a month prior to the aforementioned fact. An adult also continued to die as a direct consequence of the situation in these islands, brought by the 2016 EU Turkey statement. Judge, why is this all important? The obligation of the government is making sure that the asylum seekers that they received and the people that are in the country are getting safe housing, they're getting food, they're getting provision for children who need this. But the problem is that the failed system of these nation states are a harm to the asylum seekers. So they die when they flee their home. They are discriminated and get no job opportunity because of this, and they're also sexually assaulted in the process and when they finish the process. Because of all of this, Judge, I urge you a strong con ballot. Thank you very much.